Good evening, everyone, and welcome to part two of what you need to know to become a strong advocate for your child. So, tonight, part two, we're going to be focusing on feel confident about the IEP meeting agenda. So, the agenda of the IEP, the district agenda, and your parent agenda are very important components to you understanding the IEP process, winning at your IEP, getting your concerns and requests included into the IEP, and creating a more cohesive and collaborative IEP team. But before we get into that, I want to ask you to please like and share this video because I want the algorithms to go out so it can get to other parents who have kids on IEPs and need this very pertinent and critical information about how to become a strong advocate for their child. So please like and share. Please go back and listen to the first last night, which was part one, where I focused on learn how to understand the IEP document. I went over all the six most important parts of the IEP document. So please go back and listen to part one yesterday. It's right there on my Facebook page because it's really a series and it goes together. So you really should be listening to all three parts to get a good understanding and a good foundation on how to understand the IEP process, prepare for your IEP meeting, and write a parent agenda and understand the IEP agenda. So please ask questions. Please post in the chat questions you may have because I'll be answering those questions at the end of this lesson this evening. So let's get into it and let's start talking about the IEP agenda. Now, prior to the IEP, the district is most likely going to send you their district agenda. Okay, that's typically what they do. They might not send it to you prior to the meeting, but sometimes they do. But definitely when you get to the meeting, they're going to hand you their district agenda. Or if it's virtually, they're going to bring it up and then they're going to go, okay, here's the agenda for our meeting today. So that's the district agenda. That's their what they hope the outcome will be of that IEP meeting. But the most important thing that you need to know is that you, as a parent and as an equal IEP team meeting participant, you have input into that IEP meeting agenda. You have input into every single decision, discussion, topic that has to do with your child. They really like to omit the parent and kind of run the show. They make the decisions, they make up the agenda, they give you the offer of FAPE, and they expect you to sign it. But that's not the way it's supposed to be, parents. You are an equal IEP team member. That's what IDA allots you as a parent of a child in an IEP. When I say you're an equal member, I mean you're an equal power and equal say-so, equal input on the decision making of the development of your child's IEP. So you're equal to, I don't care who's sitting around that IEP table, you have equal power to anyone there. And so take advantage. These are some of your parent rights that you should know. So they will develop their IEP agenda. And if you go back and listen to last night's part one, you'll understand what I'm talking about because the IEP document, those six components of the IEP document are the exact same steps and order of the IEP agenda at an IEP meeting. So every IEP meeting, they always go over the same order. Now I'm talking about an annual or a triannual. They will always have the same order, which is the same order that the IEP document is in. And as you know, if you listened to last night, that order is assessment comes first. So if they did any assessment on your child, they'll first review the assessment findings. Then they're going to look at the previous goals from last year. Then they're going to look at the present levels of academic performance. Then they're going to discuss the new goals for the upcoming year. And then they're going to look at the accommodations for your child. Then they're going to look at the services. And then they're going to talk about the placement for your child. And that's the same as the document, is the same as the IEP district agenda. Now, let's talk about your agenda, parents, and how you can write an agenda to have your input as well. So, when you write an agenda, you should send it to your case carrier or your program specialist prior to the meeting and say, this is my parent agenda that I would like to have included into the district agenda for my upcoming IEP meeting for my child. And what they typically will do is they'll take your parent agenda and your items and they'll embed it into their district agenda. Then guess what? You had equal say-so in the development of their agenda. If you don't do that, then at the beginning of the meeting, they would ask you, so parents, do you have any concerns? And then you might say a couple concerns off the top of your head. But if you aren't prepared, you're going to forget concerns, you're going to forget requests, and they're going to jot it down. And then they might give you 2 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that, to talk about what your concerns are. And they go forward with their agenda, and you don't get anything done that you wanted to get done because you didn't provide a parent agenda that they embedded into their agenda and allotted enough time to talk about each issue. So how you would write a parent agenda would be that you're going to use the exact same steps as the document because that's the order they're going to go in, right? So you're going to start with assessment if they had an assessment, and you're going to write down all of your concerns about that assessment. If you want those recommendations that were made in that report, you're going to write, I request that the recommendations that whoever your assessor was made in the report be implemented. I request that the 2 hours of speech and language services that Dr. So-and-so, speech and language pathologist, recommended for my child be approved. So you're going to write your concerns or requests regarding the assessment. Number 1. Number 2, you're going to look at the previous goals. If you have questions about your previous goals, always what should be in there is, I expect to see all the data collection that substantiates the progress on my child's goals and review that data collection, informal tests and quizzes. What else do they do? Samples, work samples, your child's work samples. I expect to review that during the portion that we're going to talk about previous goals. You're also going to ask them prior to the meeting to make sure all the teachers bring that evidence to the meeting when they go over previous goals. I talked about that yesterday as well. Then they're going to talk about the present levels of academic performance. And because, as I talked about last night, you're going to have the draft, you're going to see the draft, so you would have been able to look at the present levels of academic performance. And if there's anything in there that you disagree with or that you question, then you would put that in your parent agenda. You know, under reading, I'm just pulling this out of the air. Say you have a concern about reading. This says that my child's reading at a 3rd grade level and can comprehend at a 3rd grade level. I disagree with that. Show me the evidence that they're doing that, because that's not what I thought about my child. Of course, that's not what you would say, but that's your concern for the present levels or whatever it might be under present levels. You're going to write that on your parent agenda. So new goals, the next accommodations. If you have new accommodations you'd like to add for your child, then you write them there. I am requesting blah, 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 whatever accommodation it is you're requesting. If you have questions about accommodations, concerns about accommodations, you think that they're not implementing the accommodations, there's a problem with the accommodations, maybe the teacher isn't doing it, or they're not doing it across all settings, or you want to ask them that, this accommodation needs to be done in speech as well. Whatever it is in the accommodations that you want to talk about, you're going to add that to the accommodations step on your parent agenda. Then services. So here is your opportunity to write down, I am requesting an increase to 2 hours of speech and language based on the recommendations in the assessment report that we are reviewing today. Whatever it is about services that you want to ask for, you write it down in your parent agenda. If you have concerns about services, you want to talk about whatever it is under the service step of the agenda, you're going to write that on your parent agenda. Then placement. So if you have a concern about your child's placement, that's when you're going to talk about it under the placement section, and you're going to write that in your parent agenda. So writing your own parent agenda is a huge advocacy step that's going to have you have a better outcome at your IEP meeting, because they're going to embed it into their district agenda, and you will be able to have time to talk about your issues and to get them documented in the IEP somewhere. I talked about that last night too, making sure that the scribe documents what the discussions that are being made, the decisions that are being made, action items. If they say, oh, we're going to come back in 2 months and look at data collection that we took on this or that should be in the IEP. Whatever is going on in your IEP has to be documented somewhere. If they say, okay, yes, we are going to increase speech to 2 hours a week, then they need to write it on the services section of your IEP. When you get a copy of your IEP after that meeting, there better be 2 hours of speech and language on the services section of your IEP. So this is how you need to make sure that you understand the IEP document and you understand how to advocate and make sure that your issues and concerns and requests are heard at your IEP meeting. So now, parent concerns. So part of the IEP agenda, now different districts do it differently, okay? But there's always, at an annual and a triannual, there's always a period of time, sometime. It'll either be at the beginning of the IEP meeting or it'll be at the end of the IEP meeting, when they're going to look at you and they're going to ask you, parents, what are your concerns and priorities for the next school year for your child? And most of the time, parents are not prepared to answer this question if you didn't take the time to prepare your parent statement prior to the meeting. This is the opportunity for you to have documented in the IEP document what your concerns are, what your requests are, and what you would like to see changed in your IEP. And parents blow this opportunity all the time because they don't prepare themselves about what they're going to say when they ask you what your parent concerns and priorities for the next school year are. So the biggest advocacy step you can learn to do is, when you write your parent agenda, you sit down and you write your parent concerns and priorities statement as well. And they can take that statement and implement it and write it into the IEP where it says parents' concerns and priorities statement. Okay, so you're going to write in that statement anything you're requesting for your child, anything you're concerned about for your child. If you're not happy with the placement, if you're not happy with speech services, OT services, if you're not happy with the accommodations, if you're not happy with anything in your child's IEP that you want changed, you're going to write in your parent concerns and what your priorities are for your child for the upcoming year. So your priority might be, I want my child to be at grade level in reading by within this school year, by the next school year. So because an annual is always from that date that you're having the annual, and then you're going to have your annual around the same time in a year. So within a year, what do you want your child to accomplish in that year? What is your biggest priority for your child at school? And that would also be included in your parent concerns statement. So you're going to add that statement to your parent agenda, and then you'll be all ready to talk about that statement during the IEP meeting when they ask you that question. Now, some districts have an issue with writing it exactly how you wrote it in your parent statement, and they might say that they're going to just write see parent agenda for the parent concern statement. You can advocate that you don't want that to happen, and this is how you do it. So you've submitted your parent concern statement. It's on your parent agenda. So when they ask you, instead of just reading it, you can verbally say, I'm concerned about my child's reading level and I want to see 1 year's growth next year. I am requesting 2 hours of speech and language. And when you're saying this, then they have to write it down. Okay? Because there's a little section that says parent concerns and priority statement that's typically right at the beginning of the IEP. I think it's right after old goals is where I think it is, but it's you should be able to find it in your IEP. There's a little box where they can write the parents' concerns and priority statement right in the IEP. So if they don't want to copy word per word what you wrote, because they're going to be adversarial and they're going to be difficult about it, then you be prepared to just say it at the meeting, okay? And don't pretend like you're reading it, because then they're going to say, well, we'll just attach it. So you speak it, and when you speak it, they have to write it. So you have to, just beat them at their own game. You have to know what's coming, know what their tactics are, and beat them at their own game. Okay, so different districts do different little tactics on the way they treat parents, on the way they misinform parents and coerce parents and mislead parents. So you just got to get used to what your district does, and you have to be smarter than them and beat them at their own game, because that's what it is. It's a power trip game, and they want to hold all the power. And they want you to be subservient and just listen to them, accept what they're offering you, and sign your IEP. But that is not what we're going to do, because if you do that, your child's needs are never going to be met. Your child's never going to be able to reach their potential, because you're probably most likely not going to have the services, the supports, the accommodations, and the proper goals in your child's IEP for them to reach their potential. Because this is, an advocacy responsibility of parents to understand how to have the local school district approve everything your child needs. Whatever is impeding your child from accessing the general education curriculum, whatever is impeding your child from progressing towards their goals, whatever is impeding your child from possibly graduating from high school with a high school diploma, leaving high school to go out and get a job after high school, possibly go to secondary education, continued education, and live independently, they have to address through therapy, through services, through accommodations, through goals and supports and placement. So it's your special education program. So parent concerns and priority statement, extremely important. Be prepared to talk about it at your IEP. Okay? So you're going to email your parent agenda to your teacher, your program specialist, prior to the IEP meeting. And another tip that I want to give you is you might even want to call your program specialist prior to the meeting to discuss the parent agenda, because, and I'll tell you why, because this can really help in the preparation. Because what if you want to ask for, say, another assessment? Okay, say you don't have OT and you want to ask for OT. Well, if you communicate to your program specialist prior to the meeting that you want to ask for an OT assessment, or you want to ask for a psych assessment, or whatever it may be, they can invite the psych to come to the meeting. They can invite an OT to come to the meeting, so that at the meeting, the psych or the OT or whoever it is that you're requesting an assessment from can ask you questions about what are you looking for? Why do you want to request assessment? And they can develop an assessment plan right there at the IEP meeting. That saves you 15 days waiting, because when you make a request for an assessment, you have they can take lawfully 15 days to get you the assessment plan in which you sign to authorize your child to be assessed. So if they can do it right there at the IEP meeting, you just saved 15 days. And they have 60 days to conduct the assessment and hold an IEP. Now, of course, this is California timelines. Different states have different timelines. So if you're in a different state, check your state timelines. But it's a way that you can develop a relationship with your program specialist, because if you can get your program specialist on your team and help you to support your child, help you to have your concerns and requests documented properly, your program specialist can help you a lot. If you can develop a cooperative and collaborative relationship with them, it's huge. This is always my intent as an advocate. I really try to develop really good relationships with the program specialists, all the administrators, because if they like you and they know you are knowledgeable, you're respectful, and you know what your child needs, you know what's available to your child, you know your parent rights, and you can work collaboratively with them, you will get so much more done than if you go in there and you're pissed off and you don't act professionally and you're not respectful, and they look at you as a problem parent or a crazy parent that's always complaining and never happy. Then they're going to fight you more. They can fight you, or they can work with you, and they can make those decisions. They can make it a lot harder for you, or they can make it a lot easier for you. So of course, you want to try to make it as easy as possible, because we're already up against the broken system that doesn't serve our kids, that is a bureaucracy, that's an institution. And so we have enough against us. So if you can get your team on your side, then that's always should be the intent. Now, sometimes that's really hard to do. If you have an adversarial school district, if you have a school district that doesn't respect parents, that doesn't want to work with parents, that thinks parents should just go home and be quiet and let them take care of the IEP and let them, be in control with the power over parents, and aren't collaborative minded, then you're going to have a battle, and it's going to be very difficult. But I have worked with lots of school districts where we start out adversarial. It's really hard. We're not getting along. There's a lot of dissent issues. And over time, we can turn it around. It is possible to turn it around. It's possible to get what you need for your child. And in the end, special education really does work. I've done it for 23 years. I've seen kids that were on the autism spectrum when they were little in grade school, and I've seen them grow up to come out of very difficult sensory integration issues where they're holding their ears and screaming because they have auditory processing deficits, sitting under the desk, flapping, scripting, and all of the, behaviors, maladaptive behaviors that some kiddos can have. Kids with dyslexia, remediate their dyslexia, on and on, all the different deficits and disabilities that kids can have. I've seen special education work and them be able to go to high school, earn the credits that they need to graduate with a high school diploma. But if you don't get what your child needs, if you don't get early intervention, if you don't learn how to advocate for your child, most likely your child is going to fall further and further behind grade level. And by the time they get into high school, they're not going to be able to keep up to earn the credits they need to graduate with a diploma, and they're going to end up receiving a credential of completion, which is not a diploma, which is not going to open doors for them to get a job, and it's going to rip them off from all the therapy, the remediation, and the education they should have gotten all those years they were in school. And is it fair? Is it right? Is it just? Absolutely not. Our special education system is broken. It's a bureaucratic institution. It's a government agency. But there are ways to win when you learn the advocacy skills that you need to know to be able to have the needs of your child met, because IDEA does empower us and allot us what we need to get the services our child needs. It's right there in the law. Everything that our kids needs is right there in the law. But actually having the districts do what's in the law, now that's another story. And I talked a little bit about that last night, about the fact that the IDEA is not enforced. The school districts are not held accountable when they violate parent rights, when they don't implement the IEP, when they violate timelines, on and on. They can do this all day long, all across the nation, and they are not held accountable for it unless the parent holds them accountable. And I talked about that too, that the burden is on us, the parents, to hold them accountable, to oversee our child's IEP, to make sure that the IEP is being implemented by learning these strategies that I've been teaching you and becoming knowledgeable and aware of your parent rights, the IEP process, and how to have successful outcomes at IEP meetings. So that's what I've been doing last night, tonight, and tomorrow night. I'm going to be talking about how to prepare for a successful IEP meeting. So we went from how to understand the IEP document. Tonight we talked about feel confident about the IEP meeting agenda. And tomorrow night, we're going to talk about how to prepare for a successful IEP meeting. So just remember, again, I'm going to go over those 6 most pertinent steps. If you understand this is the IEP process, this is how everything is run. If you can just really integrate these steps, that this is how the IEP works. You start with assessment. Assessment is everything. Assessment's the foundation to build an IEP program. Assessment and standardized test scores are how you identify the deficits that your child has that's impeding their ability to learn. Then from the assessment, you develop the goals. So the goals are driven by the assessment findings and the present levels of academic performance. So the present levels of where your child is performing right now, academically and functionally, that's the baseline, which are also standardized test scores and assessments. So from the baseline, they write a goal, a 1-year goal from your child is here right now, and in 1 year you want them to be here. So the assessments and plop drive the goals. And then the accommodations are written from the goals, because the accommodations are written to assist your child to meet their goals, because they can write these goals and the kid's never going to meet the goal unless you have accommodations in there to meet the goal. Your kid's never going to be able to access the curriculum unless they have accommodations to access the curriculum. So then it goes to the accommodations, and then the services are determined by the assessment, the goals, the accommodations, and then how many goals you have written. The goals drive the services, and then the services and the goals drive the placement for your child. That's how they make their decisions. They don't tell you that's how they make their decisions, but that's how they make their decisions about services and placement. It's built off of assessments and goals. Okay, so once you understand that, that's why it's so important to advocate in those assessment meetings, and so important to understand how to read standardized test scores, so important to understand how to interpret those assessment reports. And yeah, they're really difficult to understand. It's a whole new language, and each discipline is a new language. Speech, it has their own speech language. OT has their own OT language. Psychs, they all have their own different acronyms, different language, but You can learn how to read those standardized test scores. It's a bell curve. All of the stuff I teach you in the Ultimate IEP Parent Empowerment Program that I am offering. It's starting on Sunday at 12:30 Pacific time, and I teach all of this stuff to parents so that you can become a strong and powerful parent advocate for your child so you can get the IEP and special education program your child needs to thrive. If you don't learn it, you're a sitting duck in an IEP meeting. And believe me, they know that you don't know your rights. They know that you don't know how to argue their denials. They know that you're not aware when they're giving you misinformation or disinformation, and they treat you accordingly. Once they size you up and they realize that you're a parent who is not informed, they will take advantage of that situation. So that is the IEP bureaucracy of special education, and that's the situation that we're in. Yeah, it really sucks, and it's not right. We have special ed kids. They should be serving our kids to the maximum extent possible, as IDEA says, but that just doesn't happen. So I really hope that you're able to join the Ultimate IEP Parent Empowerment Program so that you can close these gaps, get what your child needs, and become empowered and feel like you are in control instead of them being in control. So let me see if anybody has any questions. Let's see now. Do you have to send your agenda? Yes, I said you should send your agenda. You don't have to send your agenda, but if you think about the fact that you want your agenda combined, they can combine it right there at the IEP meeting. You could give it to them right there, and you could say, I'd like my issues also embedded into the agenda. You get your agenda, they have their agenda. And I talked about the pros and cons of that. Let's see. Yeah, I didn't say there was a law or policy, Raven. I just said that parents have the right to provide their agenda and put forth all of their requests and concerns in the agenda. Um, Yep. And we have that right to also have our issues covered in the IEP. They don't get to run the show. We have equal input, equal rights to it's our IEP meeting for our child. So when you go to an IEP meeting, you make sure that you get to talk about what you want to talk about too. They just don't get to take over and do their agenda, and they give you 2 minutes to talk, and it's at the end of the IEP meeting, and then you don't get to say what you need to say. So don't let them do that. If you don't have enough time, then you say, well, then we have to have a continuation meeting because I didn't get to discuss my concerns and my requests. And so we're not done with the IEP, and you have a continuation meeting. So absolutely, Raven. Let's see through. They were really good about making you feel less. Yes, I always submit mine. Any other questions? I'm trying to find a question. Where can we ask for the data? So prior to the IEP meeting, you're going to request from your program specialist or your case carrier that you are requesting the data collection, the informal tests and quizzes, the work samples of your child that's going to support and substantiate the progress your child's made on goals. You're going to request it, and they have to give it to you because at an annual or a try, they have to substantiate with facts how your child has made progress toward the goal. If your child's partially met completely, or not met at all, they need to show you evidence on how they worked on it, when they worked on it, and show you the data. So you request the data. Let's see, who else? What about if you addressed an issue and you were recorded the meeting, but they didn't take note in the comment section? Happens all the time, the notes in the comment section. Now, some states, they don't take notes at all, which blows my mind because I don't know how they can't take notes when decisions are made, things are decided upon, and I don't know how they do it, but it has to be written somewhere in the IEP. If there was a decision made and people agreed on something that wasn't a service, wasn't a goal, wasn't an accommodation, they've got to write it somewhere. Okay. And so that's why I talked about this last night too. You make sure that you have 10 minutes before the end of the meeting to read the notes. Because if you don't read the notes, if they don't read the notes out loud, then you can hear if they left something out, and you can say, oh, excuse me, but you left out da 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 da. Or if they wrote it incorrectly, they wrote something that you said that you didn't really say, or they didn't write that. They might write, oh, we had this discussion and blah 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 blah, and they go on and on. Either they write no notes, tiny little bit, or they write through a book of notes. It's purposeful, guys. When they write this big long book of notes, and it's like they're like a court reporter and they're writing almost every single word down. How the heck are you supposed to read all this stuff and weed out what were the agreements made? What's the follow-up? Are you going to meet again? What was the parent requesting? Was there a decision made? So when you make a request in an IEP meeting, parents, they have to tell you at that meeting, yes or no at the meeting for your request. If they can't tell you yes or no at the meeting, they have to give you a prior written notice after the meeting answering your question and responding to your request with a yes, we're going to do it, or a no, we're not, in a prior written notice. That's the law, and that's what they have to do. So this is another delay tactic that you'll have this great conversation, the conversations in the IEP, in the notes, but then there was no decision made. So then you say, what was the decision that was made? We need it documented in the notes. I didn't hear that in the notes. What was the decision? I believe the IEP team agreed to what I requested, and get it documented in the notes. If they say, we can't give you that answer now, then you ask them to document in the notes, I am requesting a prior written notice response. They have to give it to you anyways, but I like to ask them to write in the notes that program specialist stated the parent would receive a prior written notice regarding this request. And then it's also in the notes as well. So let's see if there's anything else. How do you tell them accountable to follow the IEP? How do you hold them accountable to follow the IEP? They do what they want. So yeah, lots of times they don't follow the IEP. Like I said, all across the nation, 7 million kids on IEPs, more than 7 million kids, and they're violating IEPs every day across the nation for lots of those 7 million kids. So you are the one that is holding them accountable. You are the one that's providing oversight. You're checking. There's lots of strategies to do that. I have lots of my clients have a daily communication log. So if you think your child's missing services, the daily communication log includes that each service provider that saw that child that day, they have to initial, speech and language pathologist, initial, saw your kid. So when you come home, you have a little journal diary of what your kid did that day. What about kids that are nonverbal or don't have good verbal communication? When you come home and you ask your kid, what did you do today? They can't tell you, right? They can't tell us what happened at school. So those kids, many of those kids will have a one-on-one aide. One-on-one aides can document in a journal. Now you're not asking them to write a big long book or, take down every single thing your kid did that day. But what you are wanting to know is, was there a behavior that was, caused my child to be removed from the classroom? Was there something that happened during the day that a parent would want to know happened during the day? Because they'll differentiate between behavioral incidents, and if it's not what they deem a behavioral incident, like your child was at risk of harming themselves or others, which that is a huge behavioral incident that they are mandated to write an incident report on. Like I have a parent that her kiddo takes off all his clothes, and when he goes to the bathroom, then sometimes he doesn't, get all the way dressed back, and that, huge issues like that parents want to know about their kids. That goes in the communication log. Okay. So you get your log. You can see evidence of when your service providers are providing services. You can hear from your teacher. Your teacher could say, they had a great day today. It's also a way for you to communicate with your team, because you can write in your daily communication log in the morning, Johnny had a horrible night last night. He's probably going to be really cranky today, or whatever you want to tell your team for that day. So it's a daily communication log back and forth, so we can feel more confident, and it also oversees what your services are. Now, if they continue to not implement the IEP, whatever it may be that they're not implementing, that's a violation of IDEA. That's a violation of non-implementation of the IEP. So you either write a compliance complaint, or you go to a due process. You write a due process complaint, and you have to hold them accountable. So you try to address it in an IEP meeting. You bring it to their attention. The IEP is not being implemented. If they're not going to play ball and they're not going to fix it, then you have to take the next step of advocacy, parents. You have to take the next step, which is writing a compliance, a state complaint, or filing a due process complaint. And because if you continue to allow them to take advantage of you and violate your child's IEP, they're not going to get their services. It's a violation. So you got to take the advocacy steps. Okay, so let's see. I think that's all the questions. Does anybody else have any other question that you want to ask me before we're done? I think we're done. So anyways, guys, I put the link in this right here in tonight's Facebook Live. I put the link right there for the Ultimate IEP Parent Empowerment Program. Like I said, starts on Sunday. I hope to see you there. And I hope to see you tomorrow night for part 3, where we're going to be talking about how to prepare for a successful IEP meeting. Okay, guys, thanks for being here. I'll see you tomorrow night. Take care, everyone.